Asia will be a major growth driver and will perhaps will be driven by the demand in China and India. So it will remain major growth driver in long term, but in short term there is a competition between Europe and Asia, and Europe is ready to pay any price. So if you look at the Dutch TTF and all those indexes, they are running much higher than JKM and West Indian market. It's yesterday I was seeing it. It was almost $66 somewhere, and this Asian market is around $43, $44. So like this, difference is there. So they are ready to buy it at any price because winter is approaching, and they have to store LNG. So they are not sparing any opportunity to buy LNG. So this is the reason there is a dearth of supply in India for LNG cargoes, and that is causing an impact for Indian buyers because the prices which are being offered are not affordable, and nobody is ready to buy at that price. There is huge demand for LNG in India, but not at that price. So this is somewhat very peculiar situation, but we hope that it should come down to normal because it cannot remain so forever. And if you look at the LNG prices, and it has been volatile, no doubt, and dollar and crude oil basically is ranging from $90 to $100, and LNG prices are ranging from $40 to $50, which is almost 50% of the crude in terms of the scope if you look at it, which is 3 times the global parity prices, which is highly unviable and unsustainable for consumer anywhere in the world. But if you look at the price under long-term contract, they are still in tandem with the crude oil prices. And with the increased crude oil prices also, it has been in the range of $14 to $16, as against $8 to $10 in the same period in previous year. So I think this kind of hike in the prices of oil will soften only after 2025-26, after commissioning of the various projects in Qatar, US, and elsewhere in the world. Because right now it's a short supply because of this various reasons, including Ukraine-Russia war. So we should hope that this war should end very soon so that the situation will normalize, maybe in next 5-6 months. That can help us. So now I come to Indian scenario. So if you look at Indian scenario of LNG, with the population of 1.3 billion and with the highest share of the young population in India, and strong economy and rising standard of living, all these will contribute to increase in share of energy consumption in India from 6.1% to 9.8%. But today Indian energy consumption is hardly 1/3 of the total global average, which means that there is tremendous scope for increase in consumption of energy in India. And with the growth of the economy, this will further augment, and perhaps this will be one of the major energy consuming countries. India will be the major energy consuming countries in the world in future. So this is how I see that it will be going forward. And if you look at the total energy consumption of India globally, it is, as per IEA report, it's almost 1/3, and it is likely to increase with the increase in population, and as I said that good economy, strong economy, it will further grow. So this is how it is going forward. And if you look at other aspects which are there, in fact, if you see the Indian commitment in COP26, there has been a big commitment by our Honorable Prime Minister, where we have committed to have net zero by 2070, and also creation of non-fossil fuel energy capacity of 500 gigawatt by 2030, and reduction of the 1 billion tons of carbon footprints by 2030, and also reducing that carbon intensity by 45% of the economy. So all these commitments can be met only when we have some cleaner source of energy, and natural gas, being one of the cleanest fuel, is in fact the right fuel, and it is going to remain there. And if you look at from this point of view also, Indian government has already committed to increase share of natural gas from 6.3% to 15% to make it a gas-based economy. And in fact, if you look at the volume increase in this kind of share, 15%, it will be almost fourfold from 150 mmscmd today to almost 550 mmscmd by 2030. So this is a kind of change which may happen. It's not a very easy target to achieve. Looking at the current prices, it seems to be very difficult, but we hope that these prices will not remain like this forever. And perhaps with the natural gas being the cleanest fuel, will be used most, displacing all polluting fuel. And perhaps in the next 3 to 5 decades, natural gas is likely to remain at the center stage. And basically, this is because the world and India all are undergoing through a phase of energy transition, and which makes it mandatory to have some cleaner and newer form of energy. And perhaps natural gas, as of now, seems to be the most efficient fuel for this purpose in this transition phase. And perhaps this will only augment in future, even if the renewables are there, because natural gas and renewables are going to stay together, and basically they will complement each other in future. There is no doubt about it. And they will fulfill the requirement of Indian population and also displace the polluting fuels. But if you look at the various steps which the Government of India has undertaken to strengthen the gas infrastructure, it is one of the major infrastructures, gas pipeline infrastructure, which is increasing. Another is LNG regas infrastructure, and third one is the last mile connectivity. These all three steps are there which are already underway, and pipeline network is likely to increase from 22,000 kilometers around to 35,000 kilometers in the next 3-4 years. And also the city gas distribution network. After 11th and 11A round of bidding, it has almost reached the 88% of the geographical area of India and 98% of the population. So it has a huge potential, because such kind of penetration of gas in Indian market means that if there is a right price, there is a sustainable, affordable price, it has huge potential to increase the consumption of gas. So this is one of the major area which is already there, and I think city gas distribution project will come up in next 4-5 years. So they will all contribute to big, and in fact I feel that it will the major consumer of LNG or natural gas in future, largest consumer. As of now it is fertilizer, but I think so that in future this CNG will be CGD will be the largest consumer of natural gas. So this is one thing, and then we look at the another vertical which is also related to city gas or CNG related is the LNG segment, because LNG as automotive fuel is gaining momentum now, and perhaps if you look at on our part, our company, we are focusing on this particular area. We had several meetings with the ministry on this issue. We have been mandated to set up around 70 LNG stations. 4 of them are likely to come in next 3-4 months, and they are with oil marketing company, and perhaps more will come in future. So this is what we are doing right now in this area, and LNG in future is likely to fulfill the incremental demand in future. Because going forward, the share of LNG in total natural gas consumption is likely to increase from 50% to 75%. It will be most likely by 2035. Because there is not so much of domestic gas available which can cater to the needs of Indians. So there is a requirement of LNG in future, and perhaps this is one area. And apart from that, if you look at the regas infrastructure also, regas infrastructure at present is to the extent of 42.5 mmtpa, and another 21 mmtpa infrastructure, LNG regas infrastructure, is under construction. So total it will reach to around 64 mmtpa. Another say 14 mmtpa infrastructure LNG regas is undergoing in the planning stage, and perhaps that will also come. So around it will be in the range of almost 76, 77 MMTPA. But we have analyzed it because from point of view of this increase of share of natural gas from 6.3% to 15%. So I think there will be a requirement of more LNG terminal in future, which may be to the extent of 150 MMTPA also if you look at the 80% utilization in future. So I think to look at, because we need to have proper infrastructure in place if we want to make India a gas-based economy. So this is one part, and apart from that, energy consumption in various sectors, including fertilizer, city gas, and power and other areas, refineries, petrochemicals. So it has also gone up. So almost 50 MMSCMD consumption is there in fertilizer sector, which is the highest consumer of gas. Thereafter, second number is city gas distribution projects, which are consuming almost 34 MMSCMD of gas. And then it comes power sector, which is around 21 MMSCMD. So I think a major contributor is fertilizer and city gas. And perhaps city gas will surpass in future the fertilizer sector also. This is my perception. And I think what I can just say in concluding remark that if we, there is a lot of potential for India to consume LNG and natural gas, but at a right price and sustainable price. So this is one thing we have to see, but at the same time, right price we have to manage. This can only be done through some long-term contracting, because that is the only thing which can save us in these times of volatility, because if you look at today's long-term energy prices, they are $14 to $15 only, as compared to $40, $50 in the global energy market. And further, there is a security of supply also, LNG, if we have long-term contract. Short-term and spot cargoes cannot be procured at any time. But there is a security that you will have long-term cargoes because they are under a long-term contract. So I feel there should be focus on sourcing at least 75% of LNG, Indian LNG through long-term contract, and maybe 25-30% we can seek through short-term and spot cargoes. So I think this is all from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mishra, for giving the holistic picture of what is happening in the global as well as the national scenario, particularly with relation to hydrocarbon sector. And as you rightly said, the geopolitical disruption is actually, it has actually, totally twisted our energy baskets. Prices are going haywire. It's very difficult to comprehend what is next going to happen. With new statements from Russia or from Ukraine, actually, it totally hits this sector very much. Thank you very much for your comments and giving wider information on this. With this, I'd like to invite Mr. Rashu Singhal. Mr. Singhal is the Executive Director at GAIL India Limited. Over to you, sir.
First of all, very good morning to all of you. I would like to thank the organizers for inviting and giving this opportunity to talk to the August audience, as well as my fellow panelists. I would like to thank Mr. Mishra, who has maybe spoken everything which I wanted to speak. So there's hardly anything to add on to it, but still, let me add on to some of the things which I believe is important or critical for the gas sector. So as we know, the price volatility is one thing which is affecting the consumption. Some time back, maybe a decade ago or 15 years ago, we were talking about the connectivity. We were talking about the infrastructure creation. Right now, and we were talking about the availability of gas. Right now, we have long-term contracts with US and Australia and Qatar and also Russia, wherein the sources and the supply is ensured. And we have LNG terminals, and they are also being used at maybe 65% capacity. We have pipeline networks which is being operated at 50% capacity. So we see that the infrastructure is more or less there, and the last mile connectivity, CGD, we have been in a big way, the government has promoted CGD, and the way the infrastructure is being created it seems that the demand is there, but there is a problem with the affordability issue. Now, power sector again is another example. When the pipelines were laid, when the power plants were created with almost 1 lakh crores of investment in the power plant itself, and also the pipeline infrastructure was created in tandem with the power plants to meet the requirement, and it was thought that the power plants will take up a lot of chunk of gas. Now, the infrastructure contracting is there, regas terminals are there, pipelines are there, and power plants are there, city gas distribution is there. Still, we see that the consumption in India is only 6.3%, and going forward to maintain that will also be an issue. Why I am saying so? Because there are two reasons for it. One, that the primary energy is going to go up, and the whole demand centers, if we see globally, it is either China or India and Africa, where the per capita consumption is much low. The global consumption of gas is in the range of 24-25%, and we are at 6.3%. So which speaks of itself that lot needs to be done, and that should be done by all stakeholders, including the policymakers, the producers of the gas at a price which can be absorbed in the market by other developers and infrastructure creators, and also the customer side. Customers need to see a more holistic and long-term picture. They can't just be focusing only on the spot, which they have learned the hard way. So better option would be that a mix of both spot and long-term cargoes. And if we consider the amount of growth which India is expecting in terms of energy requirements, gas is definitely going to play a major role. Because I was there in some conference some time back, and people were talking about we have perhaps jumped the queue in terms of moving straight away to green energy or hydrogen or any such fuel. But it will take some time. There are 3-4 parameters which are very critical in terms of seeing the demand to be created. One is the infrastructure which needs to be there, and it cannot be created overnight. It needs to be created with a lot of capex investment, a lot of policies which support that infrastructure. So either government pushes the infrastructure creation or the market supports the infrastructure creation. If the government is not, if the market is not supporting, the infrastructure has to be created by the government, which they are doing in terms of maybe giving some VGF for pipelines going to the eastern part of the country or the northeastern part of the country. So the infrastructure will be there. Contracting and availability is not an issue. So main thing will be to create enablers for the gas or for a cleaner fuel. In this, I would like to say that few things which can be done is one, policy support in terms of clean premium which gas should give. But I just missed one point in terms of we have perhaps fast paced the transition. We are straight away running on to the green fuel without all the enabling things to come up. And the whole narrative is to move towards a cleaner fuel. Because of that, the upstream investments have dried up. If the numbers are, I'm not very wrong, $1 trillion was to be invested in the upstream side, and only $300 to $400 billion per year is being invested. So the gap needs to be filled by what? Renewable is not sufficient to take that, fill that gap, and there are hard to abate industries which cannot take electricity as a fuel to run the factories. The major being cement and steel and some more. So gas will definitely need its share. So few things which can promote or create demand for the gas. One is that the clean premium which gas needs in terms of replacing some hard and solid fuels or liquid fuels. The second is maybe carbon taxation or emission charges, which Europe and US is doing in terms of taxing the emissions, SOx, NOx and carbon dioxide. So if we have to move towards a cleaner fuel, nobody is denying that. But suppose power sector also, the variable cost is only taken into consideration for merit order dispatch, which is again a slight problematic issue, because then gas again is falling down, and the type of prices we see in renewable energy is that doesn't make gas to be a viable option in power sector as such for the time being. But as the renewable energy will grow up in the whole grid, there will be a cost involved in it in terms of imbalance charges, in terms of non-availability of solar and wind all through the season. So it will be a challenging thing to meet, and that all involves some cost. So gas can play a role in terms of balancing the grid, in terms when the sun is not shining or the wind is not blowing. That is one part of it. Second part is that gas is playing a very big role in CNG and CGD sectors, which Mishra ji already talked about it. And so that is one area, but again it is sandwiched there between electric vehicles and also petrol vehicles becoming more efficient. So there are issues involved in it and there are solutions to it. One of the main thing is power sector, which perhaps India has to more emphasize upon. Globally, almost 40% gas is going to the power sector, whereas in India it is hardly 20%. And we are operating at 22 PLF, and maybe it is coming down even further because LNG is not affordable in the power sector. So that is one area where we should, as a country, should look into it. And also per megawatt emissions which are coming out from coal-based plant vis-a-vis gas-based plants. And if we take into account the older plants, which is thermal-based power plants, their emissions are much higher. So if some sort of priority is given to more cleaner fuel, because the direction is very clear, we are moving to renewable energy, we are moving towards reduction in carbon emissions. So that can be achieved in a gradual manner. It should not be a knee-jerk reaction of straight away going to renewables without being prepared to absorb either the cost of it or their infrastructure is not ready. So those two things are important in my view to be addressed by all stakeholders, including policymakers. The other part is how to give a more stability in prices to the consumers. So for that, again, Mishra ji talked about it, that we should have more long-term contracts, and customer side, they should be more mature enough to see because crude prices are much more stable as compared to gas prices. In last 1.5, 2 years, we have seen $2 per MMBTU to almost $70, $80 per MMBTU. If we translate it to energy terms, it is almost $10 per barrel to $400 per barrel. Now these type of fluctuations are not a good sign for any market to sustain, and therefore the long term is one of the solution, and right now several indices and several options are available to the customers. Hedging options are also there to take care of foreign currency fluctuation. So in sum and substance, it is true that it is challenging to increase gas share, but the direction is clear, and the government is also focusing on different initiatives to promote both upstream side, the midstream side, and also the downstream consumption side. So I hope I made the message clear that all of us needs to be doing our part, our bit, to make this 6 to 15% a reality, and for that lot needs to be done in terms of everything. All have to play their own small part in it, and GAIL definitely is doing its bit by creating the infrastructure as well as sourcing the gas from different places, as well as coming out with different models to make the prices more stable. So I will be happy to take any questions as such after Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ashush Singhal, for sharing your perspective. And now we have a special address from our guest of honor, Dr. C. Lakshma Reddy, Additional Director General Exploration, Directorate General of Hydrocarbons, Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, Government of India. A brief biodata of Dr. Reddy. Dr. C. Lakshma Reddy is an upstream oil and gas professional with more than 3 decades of diverse experience covering the entire gamut of E&P industry. During his tenure with GAIL, he worked in business development and succeeded in convincing the management of GAIL to venture into upstream hydrocarbon sector. He was associated with Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas on review of development plans of fields and concurrent review of performance of all major oil and gas fields. As a member of corporate war room of ONGC, He effectively monitored E&P status and various activities undertaken to achieve the goals and objectives of the organization. Dr. Reddy, in his present leadership role at DGH as Additional Director General Exploration, is responsible for award of acreages, hydrocarbon resource assessment, national data repository, geophysical data acquisition, devising policies to apprise Indian sedimentary basins and monetize discoveries. In all these roles, he always followed a collaborative approach in executing varied responsibilities. With diversified field and corporate experience, he has helped to equip himself with C-suite qualities and a leadership position in the E&P industry. So who better than Dr. Lakshma Reddy can actually tell us and educate us about the hydrocarbon sector and what is happening in the current times. Please come, sir, over to you.
ये क्यों रखा है? ये बंद करो। A very good afternoon to all the esteemed guests and dignitaries present here today in this summit of organized by PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and especially the Hydrocarbons Summit 2022. Somebody was mentioning, people get confused. Hydrocarbons is a big value chain actually, and it is my privilege to address the house today. And the theme is very apt. It is integrated energy management. In the sense, when Prime Minister was inaugurating Urja Sangam's thing, he said, he set a goal, 10% import reduction of oil and gas. So that time also there was a lot of thought process which was taking place. Is it possible 10% import reduction of oil and gas? Because with the demand growth increasing tremendously and in a big way it was increasing. So then they thought, it's instead of saying the 10% import reduction of oil and gas, why can't it be 10% reduction in the energy consumption, energy import, not be specific to oil and gas. That's how this integrated energy management has come in. It's just not only the upstream, it's a combination of everything. It's a complete energy management in the country, which will be, moving towards that goal of, achieving 10% import reduction. For a country of our size, it's a big Herculean task even to reduce 10% of the energy consumption in the country. And as you all know, recently there are two black swan events happened. What are those two black swan events? One, I would say COVID-19. What did it do? Because it's a rare phenomena which has happened. That's why I'm terming it as black swan events. During the COVID-19, what it did is, it has killed the demand across the world, across the globe. There was a total lockdown of the countries. Everything has come to a standstill. So as a result, the futures market of the oil has gone into the negative, which was never imagined, because the storage capacity was full and there was no capacity to store any more further. As a result, people wanted to, to offload their stake both in the tankers, on the high seas, as well as from the field. Because upstream is like this. It is not a tap to turn on and turn off at a very small interval. Because once you shut down the oil and gas wells, and it takes a lot of time to revive that. That's the reason, in order to keep it producing, it has happened and the futures went into negative as there was no storage space. Exactly, several prophecies have been coming with regarding to forecast of oil and gas and all those things. It is really extremely difficult to forecast anything like that. But nature has its own balancing mechanism. Or maybe we will say God has his own plan for everybody here. We think we are bigger than that, but it's not really. I believe in that. And the second black swan event which has happened is the Ukraine war, invasion of Ukraine by Russia. Or maybe whatever may be the reasons, whatever may be the geopolitical reasons, some people are calling it as, we have seen all the oil wars earlier, but this is a gas war which is happening actually. The real, maybe the sense is that it's a gas war. We are seeing the gas scenario and the effect which is happening there. Why I call this as a black swan event is, nobody expected a conventional war to take place in a scenario where the high-tech war is there, the countries are equipped with the nuclear weapons, and never expected a conventional war like this will happen. What did it do for especially energy industry and especially hydrocarbon industry? It has disrupted the supply side. In fact, it has balanced what has happened in the COVID-19, where the supply was where the demand was disrupted, and here the supply was disrupted. That made the balance all right, and then the crude went into shot up to a historical levels, and which was nobody has imagined during 2020. Everybody was telling in the range of 60, 70, 50. All these sorts of figures were coming, including the international banks like either IEA or World Bank or whatever it is. But nobody ever thought the oil prices will cross 100 and 120. So India, looking at these two black swan events and then the events are happening unexpectedly, nobody can foresee. India need to have a long strategy with regarding to energy management for that matter. So as you all know, energy is one of the major dominant determinants for growth of economy. It is not only acts as a benchmark for industrial development, but also signifies economic prosperity. Today we all know that India's growth story has drawn attention of the entire world. We have almost moved to fifth position, in the economic terms, we have moved to fifth position globally. And the future holds tremendous opportunity of growth for India. Our Honorable Prime Minister our Prime Minister's vision to become an energy independent nation while celebrating the centenary of our independence in 2047 requires a sustainable approach for energy management. The topic of today is very relevant when you have to devise the policies, when you have to devise the thought process or the industry associations to suggest the policy makers, to suggest the several steps to be taken to the policy makers. These are all, such deliberations are very much needed and very apt one. And as you all know, India is committed to provide clean energy to all its citizens while reducing carbon emissions, which is one of the challenging one. The commit can be met by adopting a two-pronged approach, focusing on both on supply and demand. How does, India can have a long-term strategy? Must be calibrated in the context of first, a key macro global aspects. In global context, the peak oil will happen. However, the timelines differ. IEA's assessment shows this could happen in 2035. In fact, during COVID-19 time, everybody said this is the now. COVID, all of a sudden, peak oil demand is upon us, and no more further growth will be there in the oil demand. But that has proved to be wrong. The global oil supply dynamics will undergo changes too, as relatively recent world-scale discoveries, notably in Caribbean, African continent, Gulf of Mexico, will go on strong in coming years. Because, we have been telling major discoveries, we cannot make any more major discoveries, but, with a more and more exploration activity, we have been making the discoveries. But it is always in the spells and bounds, and long gestation upstream industry, and it will, oil will flow after, substantial period of doing the exploration and appraisal period. That's why we call it as long gestation projects in upstream. Technological and economic breakthroughs in direct air capture and carbon capture utilization and storage have the potential of extending acceptance of life of fossil fuels, including the adoption of clean coal technologies coupled with the carbon capture. This is one of the most talked about the topic at present. Technology driven and progressively reducing costs and increasing efficiencies in renewable energy production like wind, solar, battery storage, battery options, electrolyzers, hydrogen fuel cells, etc. will eventually bring superior overall benefits for users of energy and accelerate the rollout of energy ecosystems. However, access to technology and green finance will strongly influence the pace and timings. Finally, the growth of renewable energy and expansion of electrification, potentially more options like local energy production, say it is a biomass or something else, and the countries will embark on new models of building energy security. But when you come to India, India has to move in a different aspect, and then it need to have its own strategy to do the things. Energy remains the key driver of growth for India, not only from an economic perspective, but more importantly for accelerating social and sustainable development. Every year, India adds a city the size of London to its urban population, involving vast construction of new buildings, factories, and transportation networks. Coal and oil have so far served as the bedrock of India's industrial growth and modernization. I would say, it is not the energy transition is taking place, it's an energy transformation. Civilization or the human evolution has started with the energy deriving from the sun. It's a solar energy. What has happened? This solar energy which we were deriving directly, and then we have used subsequently the wood. Due to the photosynthesis process, the energy derived from the sun is stored in the chlorophyll in the plants. So the energy is stored in the chlorophyll. This chlorophyll, when a dry wood we fire, we were deriving the energy from the plants initially during the civilization. From there, what happened? These plants got buried and the energy transformed from chlorophyll and got entrapped in the coal and other fossil fuels, which is the beginning stage of the thing. When it further cooks, we call it in geology terms kitchen. These hydrocarbons generate because of the cooking which happens in the kitchens. That is the natural kitchens. This energy which is stored in the plants gets further cooked. From coal it transformed to oil and then gas. Then from oil and gas we are again coming back to, through renewable mechanism, we are coming back again to solar energy. Now you mean to say that the basically evolution of the human mankind as well as the civilization, we are making a complete cycle. We are now coming to a relay more on the solar energy which is happening. As India moves towards a $5 trillion economy, as said by our Honorable Prime Minister, we all are contributing towards that direction. And next few years, the demand for energy is bound to grow, because always the development takes place with growth of consumption of the energy. We cannot stop utilizing the energy, otherwise our growth will stall. As per IEA, India would lead the global oil demand growth on the back of increasing urbanization, industrialization and transportation, and would also become the fastest growing market for natural gas. India's oil consumption is forecast to rise from 4.8 million barrels per day 2 years back to 7.2 million barrels of oil per day in 2030 and 9.2 million barrels of oil per day in 2050. As per the IES, key scenarios based on stated policies, these are the figures which were given. The projection shows the centrality of oil is in the Indian economy over the next few decades. Unlike the global scenario, what people have been telling, globally the demand of oil might come down because they have already matured economies. There is no further growth which is taking place. As the energy transmission comes, the electric vehicles come in, all those things with the carbon capture and then net zero goals. But what is happening? You have shifted the manufacturing base from your developed countries to developing countries. The carbon emissions are happening basically in the other part of the globe, and they keep saying that there is no carbon emission in our continent. But what you have done, you are just only enjoying the fruits which has derived from the energy. You shifted the manufacturing bases, you shifted all the industry which makes the atmosphere dirty, and elsewhere the basically carbon dioxide emissions are made, and then create a situation that please don't emit the gas. But we need all the products to enjoy and to have our own lives very comfortable in the developed world, which is really a sort of I won't say a hypocritical statement to make actually. That is the thing basically. I don't want to say on the platform. Under IEA's stated policy scenario, the global oil demand will peak in 2030 at 103 million barrels per day and stay unchanged until 2050. China's oil demand is forecast to expand 5th to 15.7 million barrels per day in 2030 before declining to 13.4 million barrels in day in 2050. India will remain the third largest oil consumer in 2030. I strongly believe the people keep blaming oil and gas industry. They are responsible for the carbon dioxide emission and for the climate change, which I don't believe. In fact, we should be thanking the oil and gas industry for reducing the emissions. If oil and gas discovery would not have been there, what would have happened? Probably we would keep on, in our primitive stage, we would be firing, we will be, burning the wood and the coal. That would have emitted much more carbon dioxide than what is happening today. What we need to do is we need to have a sustainable development instead of blaming a particular industry. This is basically, a theory which is being constructed to kill the investments in the oil and gas industry, so that countries who have discovered the oil and gas can make the enormous profits, and the countries like India now can suffer because we are all import dependent country. In that scenario, it is very much important for us. Energy transition takes place, but energy transition, where it comes, India needs tremendous energy. How much of rural mobilization has taken place? Where is the rural mobility? Where is the personal mobility if you compare with the population elsewhere in the developed countries? We are yet to have that. Even if the transportation texture gets transformed with the electric vehicles and all, but oil to chemicals, how can you replace oil? The coat which we are wearing, the oil is there. Polish which is used in this table, oil is there. Oil is there elsewhere, everywhere, and it has pervaded into every part of our life. We are enjoying the fruits and the comfort which has been given because of the oil and gas. However, the current Russia-Ukraine crisis has again shown us the volatility in the oil and gas sector. The crisis has triggered a huge rise in global crude oil prices. For India, which imports nearly 85% of its crude and 53% of the natural gas demand, there is a high price to pay. This global crisis has not only disrupted the oil and gas supply chain, but has also shot up food inflation, transportation, and manufacturing prices, and put high pressure on the government's different social initiatives across the world, not only in India. A viable way to shield our consumers from this volatility is through boosting our country's oil and gas exploration and production, moving towards the clean energy. This is the narrative which I am giving on the global front also, and that is where my role comes into play in DGH and in the Ministry of Petroleum Natural Gas will gather the importance with regarding to that. Given the global context, committed changes in policy and regulatory system to promote energy transition, new energy supply options, and India's active role on global platforms, which is well recognized, the coming next decade shall be path-changing, marked by many shifts from conventional models of managing energy demand and supply. I believe coming next decade shall be a transformational one for Indian upstream sector. India must reposition itself to maximize the potential benefits from its vast sedimentary basins and the resources which are hiding there. And we in oil and gas in E&P industry, we say we need to discover the elephants hiding in these sedimentary basins. When I say elephants, what I mean to say is giant oil and gas fields. It is only the place, we have to do exploration, then only we can say. Otherwise, as a geologist, we always say, or other people will also say, oil is not there until you discover it. When without doing exploration, you keep saying that there is no oil and gas in India. This has happened in the past also. A lot of global oil majors came and they did a scanty exploration. They said there is no oil and gas. Luckily, perseverance of our geologists, perseverance of our geoscientists, with the help of Russians, we have discovered the Bombay High, and then the oil story of the India began. Otherwise, oil story of India is almost 168 years old. It almost coincides with the oil story of the world, where we have drilled the well in the oil history, initial stages in the Northeast. We are the one who discovered the oil and gas. We have sailed from there. Several policy reforms we have made. In a major policy drive to give a boost to petroleum and hydrocarbon sector, government has unveiled a series of initiatives. The reforms in hydrocarbon sector are based on the guiding principles of enhancing domestic oil and gas production, increasing investment, generating sizable employment, enhancing transparency, and reducing administrative discretion. And the policy reforms have taken place. It almost coincided with the economic liberalization of the country. And similarly, oil and gas industry was also liberalized. Then we moved from the nomination regime to contractual regime. And in the contractual regime, first we started with several rounds, field bidding rounds. And then we also did, under new exploration licensing policy, we had a PSC regime, production sharing contract regimes. But there were several issues which were complicating the contracts in PSC. So as a result, government has moved on from production sharing contracts to revenue sharing contract regimes, which has much more liberalized terms, more minimum disruption into the contracts or minimum interference by the government into the contracts, and more of a governance role which has dawned upon. It is up to the operators how they go about it in the revenue share contracts. So in the recent past, government has announced, in the recent past means I mean to say 5 years back, hydrocarbon exploration licensing policy, and connoted it as help, which sounds very friendly. We are there to help you actually to produce more and more oil and gas, which was launched with a clear objective of boosting the production of oil and gas. This policy is based on, basically, I was telling you, on model revenue sharing contracts, which has replaced the earlier model of production sharing contracts. Under help, we moved on with an open acreage licensing policy where the investors can carve out their own blocks and come and do the data. And NDR was also established to bring in the legacy data of 68 years old of E&P industry, and the data gathered over the time has brought into NDR so that potential investor can look into this data at NDR and then decide about his project and project viability. For early monetization, unmonetized discoveries of national oil companies which were there, government approved marginal fields and discovered small fields. In the discovered small field round, we had awarded several contracts in the last 3 rounds of discovered small fields. These fields were lying because of the various reasons, economic reasons, and with the focus. It's wrong to blame national oil companies. They are the one who has put India onto the hydrocarbon map of the world. Moving on, when we got the independence, we were producing probably 0.5 million tons or something like that. When Keshav Malviya was petroleum minister, producing 5 million ton of oil was that time it was the target and dream. So we moved on from those days, and producing 30 million tons is not a joke. It's the only thing is, as India's economy progressed, the demand increased, we started consuming more. That's why there is a demand supply gap. But a common citizen sees the gap is so much. We are importing 85%. What's our geoscientists doing? What's our upstream companies are doing? They are not doing enough. They have failed in their goal. But it is wrong to say, you need to appreciate your child when he is putting efforts, when he is getting 80% of marks. You can always encourage him to get 90% of marks. But if you say you are not done anything, you are a failure, you don't do anything, then basically the morale of the people who are involved in the process will go down. Being from government sector, I am telling you, this is, they have done a tremendous, yes, they will be doing, but they were focusing on producing more from the discovered fields. As a result, small unmonetized fields were lying because they wanted to focus on those fields, taking the projects in a cluster manner, and so that to become economical, because small field exploiting when there is no infrastructure, it is difficult. Even now we see several gas fields in Tripura where the offtake is not, the development has not taken place. GAIL is not taking the gas. But now when the utilization was not there, it stalled for some time. Once infrastructure develops, then viability of developing these small fields will be more economical for any entity to produce. The PSUs have been created to do business at profit. It is not at loss. And then at the fag end of the year, you see at the balance sheet, you are making a loss. So that is the thing. So the business sense has to prevail in any business. And unconventional is one area where the coal bed methane, then the frontier areas, gas hydrates, coal bed methane also several rounds, this has happened. It's a cost intensive. Shale gas policies have been brought in, and several proactive policy reforms have taken place. Adequate subsurface geological information about a basin is a precursor for any meaningful attempt towards exploration of oil and gas. To build a reliable and robust geoscientific database covering the entire sedimentary basin of India, having at least one parametric well in each basin, a national program, Mission Anveshan, has been designed and sent to the government of India. It's under examination. But in the past, Government of India has launched several flagship programs like National Seismic Project, Hydrocarbon Resource Reassessment. The main thing which is required is data initiative, data generation and its storage and assimilation and dissemination. This is the most important aspect of upstream E&P industry. Then only the potential investor can come and invest. For that reason, we had established NDR, and the government has funded several projects where the data acquisition taken place. We processed it and we have put it in NDR, and then we are giving it to almost free of charge with a nominal prices to potential investors, so that they can carry their data to overseas centers, they can process in their own way, they can bring in their own intellectual input into the thing, and then they carve out their own blocks and bid for it, and probably has to be done a intensive exploration. That's how NDR is playing a role of fulcrum in E&P industry. To improve prospectivity perception of sedimentary basins, the hydrocarbon resource reassessment study was done. There was a substantial jump in the resources form. Yes, when estimates are made, it is also open to criticism. We keep telling there was so much of oxygen in the atmosphere, but still there were a lot of deaths during the COVID because of the lack of oxygen. If somebody says it's only estimates you give, so much of oxygen was there in the atmosphere, but there is a process which is required to extract that oxygen and supply to the human beings. So similar is the situation here. You have hydrocarbon resources in the sedimentary basins. It is accumulated elsewhere, but it has to get accumulated in a commercial quantity. It has to be identified the locales where exactly it is lying, and to bring to the surface for the betterment of the mankind. It's not that resources estimation is totally fake or something. Yes, there are certain assumptions are made. You have a limited scanty data, and interpreting the nature is the most difficult thing. You are getting all the parameters on the surface, still we cannot predict when the cyclone comes, when the rain comes. When you say rain comes, then there will be a sunny day. So it's similar is the situation, interpreting the subsurface is not so easy. We need to encourage the people who are interpreting that, rather than speaking something which is very discouraging. And you all know, in a short span of time, India has jumped from 142nd position to 63rd position in ease of doing business ranking in 2020. Of course, World Bank has stopped basically, giving we were to be ranking. Why it's happening? Some of our neighboring countries were giving a concocted data to them just to improve their UODB ranking. But whereas India is not like that. It is a mature democracy. It is a transparent country. Our balance sheets are okay. Once in a while, events like Satyam will happen. That's again who is involved? PricewaterhouseCoopers. That's the thing. So such things will keep happening. But we need to, in fact, I don't see any country is more transparent than India. But, every system has its own positive, negative. We have to come out. So this UODB process, and one good thing is in our federal system, now the states are competing. Telangana says I am better than Andhra Pradesh. Andhra Pradesh says I am better than Karnataka. Such type of competition and luring the potential investors to their place. Today, if India has become a knowledge hub, that itself is a major achievement wherever you go. Recently, I was there in the Norway. Whenever I get introduced to somebody, oh, you are the knowledge capital for the world. That is the thing that gives a good feeling actually. So IT sector is almost totally dominated. I was asking my daughter when she was started working, how do you feel? She said, she is working in Austin. She said, I feel as if I am working in an office in Hyderabad because so many Telugu people are there in the office. That is the level our knowledge-based industry has penetrated into different offices. And the government is, majorly focused on prospecting, de-risking, and incentivizing the E&P sector. And we have been holding a constant stakeholders meeting. We are more open to listening to the people, what are the problems which are faced at the ground level. That is the level of interaction which has been happening. We have created several facilities like Hydrocarbon Clearance Cell, Urja Pragati Portal. We are directly dealing with the various agencies to get the clearance. So far, large areas in East Coast was no-go. We interacted with the Defense Ministries, Department of Space and Navy, Air Force. We got them, we need to coexist. You cannot demarcate an area and say that this is my domain, I will not allow anybody else. In that case, oil and gas industry was existing prior to that. Then probably we would have stopped that mission. But those missions are also very important for the security of the country. We convinced them saying that energy security is also equally important as you are telling security. If DRDO is launching the missiles, yes, it's required for the security of the country, but at the same time, energy security also important. I emphasized and I put forward the saying that energy security is equally important. We need to coexist, and that is the reason they said, yes, we have to coexist. They are given. So now there are no restrictions with regarding to offshore exploration, with regarding to no-go area. That is the biggest achievement of DGH and Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas in the recent past. India has been performing well on the energy efficiency front, and this emphasis should continue. We have moved on, we moved on LED bulb distribution. We have, integrated energy management as a part of that. We moved on. Several policies have been brought in with respect to renewable energy and all those things. But the supply side, when I speak of only oil and gas, which needs a multi-pronged strategy, as I was mentioning, what is that? We all have a matured fields now. Managing mature assets is one of the biggest tasks. I don't go into detail because I think I overshot my time speaking. I forgot how much time I spoke. And then digitalization, digital transformation of the industry, for that matter, any industry, digital transformation will bring in a lot of benefits. And then there is a lot of yet to find oil, yet to produce oil which is lying, which we need to focus and we need to do. And we are offering new acreages under open acreage licensing policy. We have put so far more than 2 lakh square kilometers of area under active exploration. Our target is to put anytime 1/3 of the sedimentary basinal area under the active exploration. That is our target, and that is we are also moving. Exploration is an iteration process. You can't say, several agencies have asked, including the highest level cabinet secretary asked, how much time it will take to complete exploration. Sir, it will never end. Exploration is a going on process. It's a iteration process. You keep on intensifying, and that perseverance in exploration will pay. You should not get disheartened and I didn't discover anything in this basin, we will not discover. Otherwise, we would not have done any exploration in India at any time. We would have still remained, instead of 80% to 85% import dependent, probably we would have 100% import dependent. That would have been the possible. So exploration is an ongoing process. It will go on, and it is not that after successive failures you get the success in the exploration. That has been seen in the offshore Guyana, which has created a big wealth for ExxonMobil and as well as the Guyana. There also successive failure wells were drilled, dry wells were drilled, but subsequently discovered. Only thing is you need to catch hold of that thread. How you catch. Then now there is a series of discoveries which are happening. And similar is going to be the situation in east coast of India. I am a strong believer in that. I am pitching the same thing to global oil majors as well as our Indian oil majors. They need to intensify exploration and in a systematic manner. Like we subject our body to surgery, we go to 3 doctors. Why not while drilling, why can't we ask 3 people, international experts? We got a feeling that, you should not ask anybody because the other person will think I don't know anything. But in reality, it is not. When billions of dollars investment is made and future exploration is going to take place on that basis. So basically, you need to have intellectual opinion, several intellectual opinion, and zero down to the common intellectual opinion until your success rate will increase and your geological risk will go down. Policy reforms we have been doing continuously. We are also holding and we are interacting with various chambers and commerce, and then whatever the input comes, we are taking into consideration. Say it is FIPI, say it is FICCI, say it is PhD Chamber of Commerce, everywhere we have been interacting. And we are constantly trying to improve ease of doing business. We made self-certification, we make complete online processes. Of course, it is not visible to common person. That's a different thing. Otherwise, we have been doing constantly striving. We know how much effort we are putting. And we are also increasing our renewed focus on unconventional hydrocarbon. And we are also in the process of supporting carbon capture and utilization. Recently, I went to Norway. I saw a carbon capture facility which is being developed there. The first slide which they have put is everywhere people talking in conference rooms and the small gatherings with regarding to carbon capture. But here, we are doing it here. They were executing the projects. A jetty has been constructed. They are drilling a well into the offshore depleted reservoir. They will compress the carbon dioxide which is captured from the various plants. It is not from oil and gas only, cement plants, steel plants, both Europe. This is a joint venture project by Equinor, Total as well as Shell. These three companies have come together and they are executing a project in near Bergen, a carbon capture storage facility, and they try to achieve some storage of the carbon that takes place in the depleted reservoir. Similar is the mechanism which we have done, IIT Bombay is doing, Niti Aayog is doing. To summarize, India will continue to need growing volumes of crude oil for about 2 decades or maybe more than that. MOPNG DGH has been working to enhance domestic exploration to next level in terms of scale, presents globally reputed companies. Its new approach is almost ready. Next decade will also see infusion of all-round technologies to reap cost and operational efficiencies to reach complex and deep-seated, deep and ultra-deep water hydrocarbon deposits, to manage environmental footprints of the sector, to facilitate building and creation of new relationship, collaborations, and to embark on the journey of increasing India's self-sufficiency in supply of domestic oil and gas. Along with young workforce, working population, strong entrepreneurial culture, stable growth-oriented policies by the government, a progressive democracy, and a strong visionary leadership which is existing in India at the helm, and Indian energy sector today is poised to embark on a mega transformative journey in the years to come. Government of India, along with DGH, is determined to further enhance this conduciveness of policy, regulatory, fiscal environment to boost the country's oil and gas sector. With this, I conclude and thank PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry for giving me this opportunity and to express my views. Frankly, I spoke from my heart. I don't know some of the statements whether I am supposed to make it or not, being a government official, but I made it. I stand by it. That is the thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Reddy, for a very, very powerful and thought-provoking address. In fact, I think you spoke from your heart. It was not a deliberative attempt, but it was definitely something which was very, very thoughtful. Thank you very much. And before I request our co-chair to propose vote of thanks, I'll request Mr. V.K. Mishra, the chair of Hydrocarbon Committee, to kindly felicitate our guests with a memento from PhD.
Sorry, I got a lot of time.
Very good, you flagged the European and the West.
First to Dr. Reddy, please.
Thank you, sir. Here is carbon capture is happening. In my room, probably it will capture the carbon, Thank you.
Next to Mr. Ashu Singhal. Mr. Pawan Tepravala can also join us. Thank you very much, sir. Now I will request Mr. Pawan Tepravala, our co-chair of Hydrocarbon Committee, to kindly propose vote of thanks.
So my fellow dignitaries on the dais, friends from the industry, media, and all other people present, all guests present. We've had a lovely session. Mr. Mishra gave us an overall view of the oil and gas industry, which is being affected right now with a geopolitical situation, how the world is going and how India should take its stand going forward till 2025. We had Mr. Singhal giving us a practical situation of you may produce oil and gas, but it has to be transported by various means, which is pipelines, to which agency I belong. Here I would like to Singhal that the pipeline contracting fraternity is facing a lot of problems for various trading, tendering reasons and all that, which if resolved could create more application to the consumers. And what do I say about Mr. Reddy? He is Atmanirbhar. And what a aggressive way to give it back to the West, who have developed their countries and now want us to be clean energy and things like that. Mr. Reddy gave us a very futuristic view of different types of energy which will be coming forward into our country. I must at this time also thank our sponsors, GAIL, DSK, Trenchless, and IGX. With this, we'll take a small break. Please join us. And Petronet, of course, yes. Thank you.
Yes, sir.